everyone. Good morning. Cameras on, please. Danny, make sure your camera's on. Alexis, camera's on. Hey, Jonathan, how are you? Good morning. Marta, Yanitza, I see. Sam, Tiana, Clenard, Orphelia. Yeah, I see Alexis, Danny, and Zeline. Make sure your cameras are on, please. All right. So, guys, this chapter here, it's a very short chapter. It's only 12 pages, but it's one of those chapters that's going to take the whole session. Okay, so we're going to break it into two. It's probably the most important chapter in the whole course. When I'm saying this is because all the other chapters that usually people fail at are tied into this one. Okay, so we have national agency, and then we have obviously state specific, which we'll address in the final week. But national agency, we got the word national. Talk about agency. What are your thoughts? And yes, good morning. What are your thoughts on agency? What do you guys think agency is? A lot of people will have this wrong, but I just want to see what your answers are. Agency. What is this word? Come on, guys. Type it in the Zoom. If you're watching on YouTube, type it on YouTube. All right, Jonathan says it's a group or a team. Okay, cool. Word agency. What does it mean? It says the relationship between the principal and the agent. Okay. What else? Without reading. I just want your perception of the word agency. Marta, Yanitza, Alexis. Word agency. Yana says a place. All right, Johnson says a common goal, whether it's real estate or something else. Okay. Danny says a place for agents. Okay. Who else? Let's put it on the screen. We got like 5 answers. Let's see. Clenard, what do you think? Sam, agency. Let me know, what do you think? Alexis, what do you think? Come on, guys, participate. Agency, what do you think it means? There's no wrong answers. Know that. Okay, a business that provides a service. Okay, organization, a place that helps you out. Okay. Sam. corporate. Okay. Okay, Zeline, thank you. So yes, here's what we got as far as agency. See, when we're talking about agency, we're not talking about a real estate office. When we talk about agency, the word agency means employer-employee relationship. Employer-employee relationship. Okay? Because for agency to exist, that means there has to be an agent. For you to be an agent, that means you are hired by someone to help them. Right? So let me go here to what Edith wrote. So agency is the relationship between the principal and the agent. Who's the principal? The person you represent. So employer, person you represent or hired you. Employee, you, agents, relationship. So the word agency means somebody hired and you performing a service for that person. I'm going to clarify more as we go, okay? We're going to talk about the basic roles of agency. Now, the most primary of relationships in real estate brokerage is that between the broker and the client, and relationship, known in law as an agency relationship. In every state, a body of law generally called law of agency defines and regulates the legal roles of this relationship. And the parties to the relationship are the principal, the agent, and the customer. So let's focus on these two. Principal. Okay? Agent. So the principal is the one that hired the agent. It says a client, so it could be the seller, it could be the buyer. Okay? A principal is somebody that hired the agent. And who's the agent? Not you, the broker. Because you are an agent of the broker. So whenever you knock on the door and say, hey, Mrs. Seller, would you like to sell? Like you're knocking on the door, would you like to sell? And they say, yes, I would like to sell. Bruno, would you like to represent me? And boom, perfect relationship starts right there, right? I want it, they want it, boom, done. Simple, right? If they hire me as the agent, they really hired the broker, not me. You understand? Because I represent the flag, right? Because I say New Direction Realty, or in this case, school, right? But I'm the one that represents the agency as far as the relationship between the principal and the broker. Okay, so it's the real estate office is not an agency until they're hired. So I represent the agency, meaning I represent this relationship. Bruno represents the relationship with the seller when it comes to the broker. And this is key that you guys understand from now on, because again, who do you work for? You're independent, you work for yourselves, but everything you do is on behalf of the broker, right? You're employed by a sponsoring broker. You cannot operate without a broker. So therefore, all your actions, when hired by a client, whether it's a seller or a buyer, all your actions are on behalf of the broker. So who's the agent? Immediately, the broker, and you're a sub-agent. That's what we're going to cover here. But there's another relationship that could happen. So there's principal, which is the client, and you, the agent. And then there's this guy, customer. Isn't this the same thing as client? Isn't the word customer the same thing as client? Anybody? Is the word customer the same thing as client? No, of course not. See, client is who you represent because they hired you. That's your client. That's the person to whom you owe specific duties, as we'll talk about later. Where customer is a third party, right? that did not hire you. So to make it simple, if I represent Sam the seller, okay, I represent Sam the seller, then Sam, hey Jen, good morning. Then Sam is my client, right? But Danny, right? Danny represents Nidia, the buyer. Here's the thing. I represent Sam, right? So that's Sam's my client. She's my client. Nidia is my customer. Why is she my customer? Because I don't represent her. She did not hire me. She hired Danny to represent her. So Nidia is Danny's client. So there's a clear separation. That's why I'm going to take this as slow as I can. But we have, so Sam, okay. We have Sam, we have Nidia, right? So if I represent Sam and Danny represents Nidia, right? Then here, there's agency. Okay, there's an agency because Sam hired me. So Sam is my client. Okay? Danny, here's your agency relationship, right? That's the employer-employee, employer-employee, right? And that means Nidia is your client. Okay? So Nidia is Danny's client because that's who he represents, right? But what is Nidia to me, or what is Sam to Danny? There's no relationship. There's a clear separation. So they are customers. Now, why do we need to know this? Then the difference between them. Because a customer, okay, a customer, somebody that you have to treat fairly and honestly. A customer, if you guys think about, I always talk about the restaurant business, about retail, right? If you think about it, when somebody comes, let's say you're a waiter, right? Let's say I'm a waiter for Sam's restaurant, okay? And Nidia walks in. And Nidia was referred by Danny because Danny says, oh, this is the best restaurant ever. So he walks in with Nidia, right? And Nidia goes like, I really like the food, but I don't want to pay. I represent Sam Restaurants. Can I go ahead and tell Nidia, oh, no problem, don't pay. It's fine, don't pay. Can I do that? No, because my employer is Sam Restaurants. So I have to do what's best for my employer. But I still have to treat the customers fair and honestly. I still have to smile. I still have to hear their requests and try to do the best for them within reason. Because my first duty is to Sam the restaurant. Does that make sense? So there's a difference between client and customer. Client is the one that hired you. Customer is everybody else that did not hire you. Everybody else you don't represent. So going back to the same scenario here, Sam is the seller, and Nidia walks in and looks at the property and says, Bruno, I want to offer $100,000 for it. Now, my client, they want $300,000. All I have to say, I cannot say yes, I cannot say no. All I have to say to Nidia and Danny is, listen, put it in writing. I cannot say yes, I cannot say no. And I cannot accept on behalf of my client. That's one of the things we're going to talk about. I cannot accept it on behalf of my client, but I also cannot force my clients to accept Nidia's offer because it's not in my client's best interest. A $200,000 drop is not in my client's best interest. All right? The same way, Nidia can walk in and say, hey, Bruno, love the house. Love the house. Why is your client, so why is the seller selling. If I know Sam, for instance, is going through divorce or bankruptcy or lost her job or whatever the situation might be, anytime that I give that type of information to a customer, I'm putting them in a position to drop Sam's value. You guys understand the differences here? I cannot, like, this is my client, so I cannot go and tell Nidia, oh, listen, Nidia, here's the thing, right? Sam's going through a nasty divorce, so any offer you put right now, 100,000, I think she'll take it. Who do I represent? Do I represent Nidia or do I represent Sam? All right? So make sure you guys understand the separation here. Client is the one that hired you, so created an agency. Therefore, you're an agent of the client, and you have specific duties that we're going to talk about in a little bit. Here, the same thing. Danny, you represent Nidia, so the agency was created. You owe specific duties to Nidia, not to me or to Sam. So if Nidia says to Danny, hey, Danny, listen, I really like the house, 100,000, but I have 150 or I have 200. I have more money. If they need more, I have it. Should Danny run to me and say, hey, Bruno, Sam, my client has more money. So if this offer is not accepted, more money. Are you guys understanding this? Unless Nidia specifically said, Danny, here's the offer. I want to offer 100,000. Tell them if they don't accept, right? Unless Nidia specifically states, tell them if they don't accept this offer or if they get higher offers, I'll beat those offers by $5,000 above whatever any other offer comes in, right? If Nidia specifically states, I got more money, please tell them I got more money. Unless she specifically states, Danny cannot tell any of us that she has more money. Are you guys good with this? Thumbs up? All right. All right, guys, make sure you ask questions. This is one of those chapters, okay? Jen says, unsubscribe. I didn't get any notifications. So I think there's a bell or something on YouTube, Jen. There's a bell on the channel. So you have to subscribe and you have to click that bell or whatever that's alerts. All right, so back to this. So the laws of agency are distinct from laws of contract, although the two groups of laws interact with each other. So there's two laws, contracts, which we went over fundamentals, and then agency, two different laws. But again, they go together because once you create an agency, there has to be legal competent parties. It has to be for a legal purpose. There has to be an offer and acceptance, right? So thus, the relationship is subject to contract law. However, agency law dictates how the relationship will achieve its purposes, regardless of what the listing contract states. The essence of agency is trust, confidence, mutual good faith. Okay? So the principal trusts the agent to exercise the utmost skill and care in fulfilling the authorized activity and to promote the principal's best interest. Okay? Question. In my example before, who's the principal? In the examples before that I was going over, who's the principal? Sam and Nidia are the principal? To whom? Great, but to whom? I know it's early, but you guys are really cutting it like flash. Not the OG, it's the AG. That's how it is. Okay. So Bruno and Danny. Okay, great. So Sam is the principal for who? Needy is the principal for who? I know you're saying it accordingly, right? I just want to make sure you guys are on point with this. That's it. I'm going to start representing myself as the real AG. OG is a thing of the past. Come on, guys. Sam is the principal for whom? And Needy is the principal for whom? It needs a thank you. Sam, principal to Bruno, correct. So I'm the agent for Sam, right? And Needy to Danny. Great. Now my question is, why? Why are they the principal? I'm going to drill this so much into you guys today. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to. Because again, one of those things where you guys fail the most. So, why are these the principal? Bruno or to Danny? Why are they the principal? Because Bruno's Sam's agent? Why? How did Bruno become Sam's agent? Sam. Think about the restaurant again. Customers are always right? They walk in, they sit down, they eat, right? They're customers, they're not clients. What is the difference? Like, how did Bruno become Sam's agent? And Alexis says, because they hired you to perform a service. Yes, hired. Yes, hired. Representation, because you were hired specifically in that capacity, right? Now, I'm sorry, it's going to be very boring, but I'm going to have to drill this as much as possible. Because they hired, it creates the agency. It's not we created an agency. The agency creates because you are hired to do something, okay, to perform a service. By hiring, I'm a little, okay. I don't know if we can purchase hires, but okay. Anyway, the agent undertakes to strive in good faith to achieve the desired objective and to fulfill fiduciary duties. Now, it is important to understand that the agency relationship does not require compensation or any form of consideration, nor does compensation define the agency relationship. A party other than the principal may compensate the agent. So let's go back here. Now, usually, guys, the seller, so Sam in this case, usually the seller pays the commission. Okay? Usually the seller pays the commission. But the seller is also paying Danny's commission. Because we ask 6% from the seller, Sam, 6% for instance, and we say, hey, Sam, 3% for me, 3% for whoever brings the buyer. If Danny shows up on Nidia, then Danny's entitled to 3%. The question is Danny now, because Danny's getting paid by Sam, is Danny now an agent for Sam as well? Let me know in the chat. Is Danny now an agent for Sam? He's getting paid by Sam. So is he now an agent? We got two answers. So Danny, that represents Nidia, is now getting paid by Sam. Is Danny now an agent of the seller, Sam? We got mixed feelings over here. We got no, yes, yes, no. Anybody else? Come on, guys. Well, got 4 answers. YouTubers, you want to answer? Got a yes, yes. And the answer is, drum roll. The answer is no. No. Agency relationship does not require compensation, nor does compensation define agency relationship. Who pays you doesn't necessarily mean they are your principal. So imagine how good of a service you're going to provide, Danny. Imagine how good of a service you provide to Nidia, right? Because you represent the buyer, Nidia. Nidia walks in to the house, right? And you're like, I already know I'm getting paid by the seller, so hey, who cares about Nidia, right? Getting paid by the seller, so I'm going to do the best thing that the seller will tell me to do. That's it, right? You don't go by who pays you, go by who hired you. You'll get your compensation regardless, and this is why it's so important to explain to the clients and customers what type of relationship you're going to be in. What can they expect from you? Okay? Just because, so a few of you answered yes, now it's an agent. That means I switch sides because I'm getting paid by the seller? I just switch sides? Like, hey, forget you. Money? No. You're going to get paid regardless in the transaction, but your first duty is still to help your client first and to uphold your client's interest first. So you got to remember this. Okay? It is important to understand that agency relationship does not require compensation. Most of the times, buyers don't pay for commission. Most of the times, buyers don't pay for commission. But if you represent the buyer, then that's your client. Compensation does not define agency relationship. It's not the money that creates the agency. It's the agreement to represent that creates the agency. All right? Thumbs up? All right. So, in agency relationship, a principal hires an agent as a fiduciary to perform a desired service on the principal's behalf. As a fiduciary, the agent has a legal obligation to fulfill specific fiduciary duties throughout the term of the relationship. So, we are on page, hold on, page 141. And on page 141, I already have it in green, so it's easier for you. But the principal or client is a party who hires. The agent is a fiduciary of the principal. And customer or prospect is someone you do not represent. Okay? Already pre-highlighted for you, so it makes it easier. Principal hires. Agent, fiduciary of the principal. Customer is a third party who the agent does not represent. Remember that. Okay? Now, according to the level of authority that delegated to the agents, there are 3 types of agency. There's universal, there's general, and there's special agency. Now, universal agency, first of all, what does this word mean? So I'm going to be as annoying as I can. What does that word mean? Agency. Come on, guys. What does it mean? It's an 80. Thank you for joining us. Good morning. There you go. So, word agency, employer-employee relationship. Yes, yes, and yes. Perfect. All right, we're there. Great. So then there's different types of employer-employee relationship according to the powers that are given to you. So if you're universal agent, I want you guys to write full powers. I'll explain better in a second. But for now, write full powers. Universal agents. So now we're on page 141. $5. Runs off the screen. Ask for $5. All right, full powers. Now, why are we talking about full powers? Because as a universal agent, if somebody gives you these powers, and usually does not happen as an agent, like as a salesperson. I'm sorry, as a salesperson, real estate salesperson, we don't have universal agency. But in a universal agency, so this is not only for real estate, this is agency law in general. In universal agency, okay, the principal empowers the agent to perform any and all actions that may be delegated to an agency representative. The instrument of authorization is a power of attorney. But universal agency is when you are giving full powers to somebody else to represent you in any way, shape, or form. So usually we find these in medical directives, we find these in living trusts, right? Parents, we are the universal agent for our children. If you have pets, you're the universal agent for the pets. What does that mean? It means that you can do whatever it needs to be done in order to benefit your principal. And I usually give the example of the kids, right? If you have kids and you need to move cross country or to a different country, right? Are you going to ask your kids, hey, 5-year-old, come here. What do you think about moving to California? Right? Are you guys going to do that? Are you going to talk to your 5-year-old and say, hey, what do you think about doing this? What do you think about doing that? Right? You should, but most of the times we don't. And even if you do, is their opinion going to change anything? The 5-year-old opinion? Right? Most of you are like, no, not at all. Right? Of course. We are universal agents, so we have full powers as long as we believe that our actions are in their benefit. Okay? So it has to be in the benefit of your principal. Who's your principal? When you have kids, the kids are your principal. You're the agent. You're the one responsible for them, right? So you have full powers. Hold on, Jen. I'll address that in a second. We didn't get to dual agency yet, so I'll get there. General agency, general. Instead of full powers, you have some powers. Some powers. You don't have full or all powers, you have some. So you represent in a broad range of matters, right? So you're not doing just one thing, you're doing several things. You have ongoing tasks and duties, right? But you are limited to certain things. For instance, a property manager. A property manager is a general agent. Can a property manager sell the building without the owner's authorization? Most of the times that's not a power that's given to them. Most of the times it's not. But they handle more than one thing. The property manager handles managing the property itself, hiring and firing people, managing a budget, making sure the rents are at the best rate possible for the amenities that are being given, right? And so on. There's a lot of things that a property manager does for somebody else. That's why they're a general agent. They handle more than one thing. So they have some powers, but they're not a universal agent that has full powers that can sell. Right? And then there's this one. Special or limited agency. Okay? One power or capacity. So when you represent somebody for one specific purpose, you are considered a special or limited agent. Guys, we are 99.999% of the times special agents. Isn't that cool? Right? Isn't that cool that you can show up in front of a seller's house and say, hey, special agent Bruno. That's it. Can I help you sell your house? Imagine that. Wouldn't that be cool? Right? That's it. We are special agents. Why? We're hired in one specific capacity. See, under a special agency, the principal delegates the authority to conduct a specific capacity after which the agency terminates. So, if I help the seller sell, what happens to my relationship with the seller, with the principal, with the client? What happens to that? Well, the house is sold. So our relationship, done. As far as business relationship towards this particular property. Because we were hired for that specific purpose. Right? So the cool thing about special agency, I see your questions, I'll be right there. The cool thing about special agency, the good and the bad thing, is that we can handle more than one property for the client. But every single one will be a special limited agency. Again, it's a good and a bad thing. It's a good thing because it also limits our liability. If one goes wrong, right, for whatever reason, it doesn't affect the other agencies, right? But it's bad because we have to prepare a contract for every single one of them, and we might not be able to sell them all at once in a bundle, or we have to specify, hey, there's 3, 4, 5 more listings. This one's being sold with that one, with that one, with that one. But the agency relationship ends as each property is sold. It ends for that particular purpose. So you were hired to sell property on 120 Main Street, and property 122 Main Street, and property 124 Main Street. You're hired to do that. As soon as 120 is sold, your agency relationship ends towards that particular hiring purpose. You still have the other two. Once this one's sold, then that's it. You're done with this agency relationship because that's what you're hired to do. Done. And you're left with one. And that's where you're hired to do it once you sell it, right? So again, special agency is limited to that one specific capacity or purpose. Okay? In most cases, the special agent may not bind the principal to a contract, meaning you cannot sign the contracts on their behalf. They have to do it. You cannot bind them to anything. A power of attorney, right, or even a general agency, we might include the authority that says, hey, property manager, if you need to go to the account, to the bank account, right, if you need to go to the bank account, go ahead, go to the bank account. Here's the power of attorney that says you can handle the bank account for this property that you manage, for instance. So anything they do is a contract. A new insurance, a new contractor or service provider for the building, the property manager can sign. It makes it binding on the property owner. Limited agency, you cannot accept buyer's offers on behalf of the seller. You cannot accept it. So you are limited in that capacity as well. So we cannot bind the principal to any contract. Okay, so if you represent the seller, you are a special agent. If you represent the buyer, you are a special agent. Okay? If you represent both, we'll talk about it later. The same question that Jen has over on YouTube, but we didn't get to that type of agency yet. So we have, these are the basic ones: universal, general, or special or limited agency. How do we create an agency relationship? Well, it could be oral or listing, written or oral listing agreement. It could be implied agency based on actions, right? We talked about it yesterday. How do we terminate? That means we performed. That means we concluded it, like we closed. And then there's involuntary termination, which is relationship ends because of death or incapacity of either party, abandonment by the agent, condemnation or destruction of the property, renunciation of the contract, breach of the contract, bankruptcy, or revocation of the agent's license. Any of these could terminate the agency agreement, and that's called involuntary termination. Voluntary is, hell yeah, we closed right there, boom, full performance, money in our pocket. That was a voluntary termination. We did everything we needed to do, and we're getting compensated for it. Okay. There's also mutual agreements. Hey, listen, Mr. Seller or Mrs. Seller or Mr. Buyer, Mrs. Buyer, listen, not working out. Are you okay if we end this relationship? That's what it is. And then expiration date. If it's a listing and it's beyond the listing term, then it expires. Ends the relationship. Okay. Now, involuntary termination, so you guys know, we'll talk about this better later time, but it may create legal and financial liability. So if it wasn't voluntary, like a mutual agreement or you concluded or whatever it might be, if it was involuntary, some of these might lead you, right, to be held liable for the agent's commission, or vice versa. The agent, by terminating, might also be liable for the seller's loss, depending on what the terms are. Okay. All right, next thing we have is fiduciary duties. Okay, fiduciary duties. These are the obligations to the client. Or customer. See, we don't represent the customer, but there's still some things we have to do on behalf of the customer. Okay? And these things are more ethical things than anything else. I don't represent you. I'm not going to hold you, like Nidia in the example I gave before with Danny, right? You're not my principal, so I don't have to do what's best for you, but I still have some duties to you, as I should to the general public, right? So I have to disclose stuff. If I know something, I have to say it, right? Know something, say something, right? Simple. All right? So let's talk about agent's duties to the client. Your agent duties to the client, you have to have skill, care, and diligence. That means that the agent is hired to do a job, right? And is therefore expected to do with diligence and reasonable competence. Competence is generally defined as a level of real estate marketing skills and knowledge comparable to those of other practitioners in the area. The notion of care extends to observing the limited scope of authority granted to the agent. A conventional listing agreement does not authorize an agent to obligate the client to contracts, and it does not allow the agent to conceal offers to buy, sell, or lease coming from a customer or another agent. Further, since the client relies on broker representation, the broker must exercise care not to offer advice outside of his or her field. Okay? Violations of this standard may expose the agent to liability for unlicensed practice of a profession such as law, engineering, or accounting. These are your full fiduciary duties right here. Okay? So when dealing with a client, as an agent, you're supposed to develop the skills needed to perform the required due diligence. That means you must care so much. These two are integrated here. You must care so much must care so much that you learn what you need to do to help your client. You must be loyal, okay? That means you're going to hold stuff confidential, right? When I said that the buyer has more money or the seller is going through a divorce, right? You're going to hold these things confidential. You're going to obey lawful instructions. You're going to hold proper accounting, and you're required to disclose everything, anything and everything that you know about the property or about the buyer. So this is when you represent the client, right? The easy acronyms are COLD for you to remember, which is care, obedience, accounting, loyalty and confidentiality, and then disclosure. When you represent somebody, you gotta have a COLD. Care, obedience, accounting, loyalty, and disclosure. These are your main fiduciary duties. You must care so much. Actually, all of these, anything that's here, has to do with care. Because if you don't care, are you going to be loyal? If you don't care, are you going to manage the money properly? Are you going to obey? Are you going to disclose anything? No. If you don't care, you don't care, right? So the first one, very important, is care so much that it's your client first, then you, then everybody else, right? So that means that customer is after everybody else. But there's still some things we must do for a customer. You must treat them honestly. You must be fair to the customer. And you have to exercise reasonable care and skill. And disclosures must be given regardless. Of course, we're talking about disclosures regarding the property, not disclosures of seller's condition or anything like that, but regarding the property. You guys with me so far? Okay, going as slow as I can. So, loyalty. As I said, being loyal means you place the interests of your client first. So you cannot be loyal to both to the full extent. So when you represent two people at the same time, which we'll talk about later, you cannot be fully loyal to both, right? So be very careful when you're representing both. Obedience. See, you must comply with the client's directions and instructions, provided that they are legal instructions. So if somebody says, let's say it's you're dealing with the seller, and the seller says, "Hey, Ophelia, here's the thing. I'm going to sell the house, but I don't want these kind of people to look at the house. Like this particular group of people, I despise them. I don't want to see them. Only if any of them brings you wants to see the property, say it's not available." That's practicing discrimination, right? So, with that being said, Ophelia, you're supposed to obey legal instructions or lawful instructions. And if the client is giving you a directive that's illegal, you must withdraw. That means you don't have to deal with that client. In fact, you must reject a client that will force you, or is trying to force you, to do something that's illegal or against public policy. Okay? So that's obedience of lawful instructions. Like, hey, all showings must be within the 24 hours, or have to have at least 24 hours, right? Or all offers must come in with a pre-approved mortgage letter, something like that, right? So what we're saying is, lawful instructions are okay, unlawful, walk away right away. Okay. Confidentiality goes with the loyalty. You're going to keep confidential certain aspects of your clients, right? Unless they specifically authorize you to do so. Okay. Accounting. We talked about this. If somebody gives you money, right? If somebody gives you money, like a good faith deposit or something like that, then money must be deposited right away. So you cannot be playing with their money. You have to hold proper accounting of any money that you received, right? And it goes into escrows. But that's regulated by state law. So we'll go more in detail in the final week. And then this one, full disclosure. When we're talking about disclosure, you have to disclose anything, write this down, and everything that can affect the proposed transaction must be disclosed. Okay? So, when we're talking about full disclosure, what we're saying is anything and everything that can affect the proposed transaction must be disclosed. So, what could affect the transaction? Structural damage, for instance, right? It affects the transaction because if the buyer is not aware of the defects of the property, how could that be the best offer, right? It could affect the transaction in different ways. The buyer is unable to buy because the mortgage was not approved. Shouldn't the seller know that right away? Hey, buyer can't buy? Of course, because it affects the transaction. Seller's unable to clear title. Shouldn't the buyer know, hey, buyer, listen, just so you know, there are some issues with the title. It's going to take a little bit longer to get it fixed, or it might not get fixed at all. Shouldn't the buyer know that stuff? So whatever affects the transaction must be disclosed. And we're going to repeat this also a million times. Okay, so again, an agent has a duty to inform the clients of all material facts, reports, and rumors that might affect the client's interests in a transaction. All right, disclosure of material facts. So critical material facts for disclosure include the agent's opinion of the property's condition, information about the buyer's motivations and financial qualifications, discussions between the agent and buyer regarding the possibility of the agent representing the buyer in another transaction, adverse material facts like property condition, title defects, environmental hazards, and property defects. All of these are critical material facts that must be disclosed because all of these affect the transaction. Guys, with me so far? What's up? Tiana? Hi. Like, huh? A little too fast for you? What time is it? 11 o'clock. Come on. All right. Just messing with you. If I'm going a little fast, guys, stop me. Tell me, Bruno, pump your brakes. Explain this again. All right. So, Tiana, if I'm going a little fast, what did you not get from this? While she types, I'm going to go take a nap. I'll be right back. You got a little of it? Okay. You want to ask a question, specific question, or no? There's no specific question? You cannot get a little of it. You need to get a lot of it. So where did you get lost? Guys, if you have questions, drop them now. I told you that. If you guys have questions. Where did I lose you? Right here? Okay. Sure? Okay. The only thing I was showing you here is things that have to be disclosed. For instance, as an agent, our job is to be a real estate consultant, right? Right. Hold on. Let me tone it down a little bit. So, as an agent, we have to consult in real estate. All right. So, I'm just messing with you. So, here's the thing. So we are real estate consultants. So our job is to look around the property and see if there's any damages to the property, right? So our job is to say to the buyer that potentially does not know of what the damages might be. You say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, this is what I found with the property. There's water standing over there. So there might be a leak somewhere. So let's do an inspection for that. Or there might be an oil tank underground. So it's our job to make sure that the client is aware of potential defects or even assets. Like if there's something like, look, this house has this that I haven't seen anywhere else in the neighborhood. So maybe this is the house that you want. I mean, it's great value that has this or has that. For property condition. For the good and for the bad, we have to disclose. Right? Again, if I represent the seller and the buyer, right, fails to qualify, I have to tell the seller, hey, listen, buyer still wants to buy, but there's an issue with his financial qualifications, right? They still have a motivation to buy. Just some stuff happen, like they use their credit card, right? Or they sign up to buy a car during the process. Big mistake, by the way, guys. Make sure your clients don't sign for anything or use their credit cards during the 2 to 3 months that they're pending transaction. Okay, so if you want to close, make sure your clients understand. And by the way, they're still not going to listen to you. It's like kids, right? Like kids. You tell them, please don't touch, and they go like, yep, yep, no touching, no touching, no touching. Yep, kids do this all the time, right? Your clients are like kids. You tell them, do not use your credit cards. Oh, swipe. You tell them, do not sign for a car. Do not lose your job. Make sure you don't lose your job or change jobs, right? And they go and do everything possible to ruin your transaction. That's what it is. Anyway, so what I'm trying to say, guys, is if something's gonna affect the transaction, you must disclose. That's what it is. Okay. And then this one is the other one that's very important. Again, property condition. If there's issues with the title, that's the seller. The seller needs to resolve the issues with the title, right? Not the buyer. But depending on what it is, the buyer might agree to say, this is why disclosure is key. The buyer might say, hey, seller, you're having issues clearing title because of money. Don't worry. Drop the price or give me a credit at closing and I'll pay for that right there and then. Right? Not a problem. We'll work something out. Environmental hazards, like if there's asbestos, if there's mold, if there's like anything that could affect the transaction, right? Or property defects. That's what it is. Good? Okay. Now that's dealing with a customer. That was dealing with a customer, right? With a client, I'm sorry. Now we're going to deal with a customer. Hold on. Zalene's asking, what if you have auto payments? So Zalene, if you're approved with auto payments, nothing changes. What I was saying is don't incur new debt during those 2 to 3 months period, or don't lose your job during those 2 to 3 months period, or even change jobs. That's what I was saying. But if you have auto payments and the mortgage person already looked at you and said, hey, Zalene, based on your debt to income ratio, which we'll talk about in chapter 17, but based on your debt to income ratio, your car is not a problem. Or you need to make an extra 2 or 3 more payments before we can approve you, right? But they'll tell you whether yes or no. Okay, but during that period of time of the approval, the pending transaction, don't do anything new. That's what we're saying. Until we close. Right after closing, you want to go on a shopping spree and damage your credit, that's on you, but at least we're closed. You got a house. The problem is you're going to have to pay it back. So you might lose the house that you just bought. So careful, okay? All right, so agent duties to the customer. We talked about agent duties to the client. Now it's to the customer. Who's the customer, guys? Let me know who the customer is, because some people were not here, like Sanady cleaning up right now. Who's not here. So can you guys explain who the customer is? YouTubers, participate. Who's the customer? Hey, everybody's saying third party, third party, third party. Let's see what we got. That's it? Third party? What does third party mean? It is a third party, you're correct, but third party what? And no, it's not a client. Nope. Client and customer, two different things. Customer is not the principal. Customer is a third party that you did not hire. Customer is a third party that you did not hire. Somebody you don't represent. Could be the buyer, could be the seller. Somebody you don't represent. So client is the one you do represent, while the customer is somebody you don't represent. So if I represent the seller, but I don't represent the buyer is the customer, the seller is the client. If it's the other way around, if I represent the buyer, but I don't represent the seller, the buyer is my client, where the seller is the customer. So the party you don't represent is the customer. So if I don't represent the customer, then I don't have any duties to them, right? I don't owe them anything. Wrong. There are duties that are owed to the general public. I'm going to put it like that. General public. These are your third parties. These are not the people that hired you. And these duties are, for instance, honesty and fair dealing, reasonable care and skill, and proper disclosure. See, I'll give you an example real quick. We're almost at a break. So I'll give you an example. There might be a question in the state exam or in the school exam. There might be a question that says, you're the listing agent, right? And you're hosting an open house, and the buyer walks in, and the buyer says, I want to offer $200,000 for this, okay? And the buyer also tells you, look, if they don't accept, I have more money. Now, the question said, you're the listing agent, so who do you represent? If you're the listing agent, you represent the seller. The buyer walked in, there's no representation, so they're customers. The buyer walked into the open house and said, here's $200,000. But if the seller does not accept, I have more money. So your first duty is to let the buyer know, hey, buyer, just so you know, I appreciate the offer and I'll take it. I'll relay that to my client. But I do not represent you. So careful. Anything you tell me could be used against you in this transaction. Right? Again, it's like the Miranda rights. You have to let them know, hey, listen, just don't speak anymore. If you want me to represent you, I will. But other than that, don't speak anymore. Because anything you tell me, without me representing you, I will pass along to my client. I will tell anything to the seller. So right now you just said $100,000 offer, or 200, right? And you have more money. I'll go to my client and say, hey, Mr. Seller, they have more money. Here's the offer, but they have more money. So you put yourself in a position, right? That's why we're talking about honesty and fair dealing. So Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, put yourself in a position that at a loss already. Like you're at a loss because the seller is now up here, and while you're down there, the moment you told me that info, anything you tell me without representation, anything you tell me is going to affect you. You guys understand? So we don't represent the buyer, they're the customer, but we still have to treat them fair and honestly. Okay, we still have to make sure they understand the implications of not having a relationship with us, a business relationship. All right. Next thing we have is intentional misrepresentation, and we have negligent misrepresentation. So intentional, the easiest way to remember intentional is fraud. Intentional is fraud. You know what's going on with the property, and you're hiding it from everybody. Like there's a leak. The roof is like there's no roof, right? But because the buyer cannot see the roof, they're like, oh, great house, amazing house. You know that there's no roof, but you represent to the buyer, right? You represent to the buyer that the roof is amazing. That's intentional misrepresentation. That's fraud. As far as negligent, it means you should have known. Simple. Every time you see the word negligent, that means you were careless. Right? If you let your kids cross the street by themselves, right, and they're like 2 or 3 years old and they're crossing the street, you just let them go. As a parent, you're being negligent. You're being careless. You got to remember that your clients or customers, they're babies. That's the way you have to treat them. You have to care for them so much that you should find the details. You should have known because you are the agent. You are the expert. Right? So if it's something you don't know, go find somebody that knows. That's pretty much what we're saying. Misrepresentation of expertise. An agent should not act or speak outside of the agent's area of expertise. This is simple. I mean, this is the simplest thing. If somebody asks you something about a mortgage, hey, listen, I think it is this way, but let's ask the mortgage person, right? If somebody asks you something about, oh, there's a basement. I could rent the basement, right? I have 2 rooms here. I can make an extra $500-$600 per room and this and that. Okay. City Hall, right, is going to determine if you can rent or not. We cannot give that type of advice. Right? We cannot be going out there, and a lot of agents do this. They fall into this one. A lot of agents do this. Look, first floor, $1,500. Second floor, $1,500. But then you have the attic. You can fit 2 or 3 people there, right? And you have the basement, at least 10 people. At least 10 people fit in the basement. You also have the garage. Rent the garage, right? You also have your wife. Rent your wife. Like agents, we get involved in things that we're not supposed to get involved. It's not us, right? Okay? I'm telling you, like, opinions for everything. So Nady says, oh, not gonna say that. Your cousin does that? He says these things you're saying. All right. Terrible. All kinds of people do this. Salespeople, forget it. All right? So don't represent something you are not aware of, okay? Because, real quick, so we are on page 146, breach of duty. An agent is liable for breach of duty to a client or customer. Since clients and customers rely on the expertise and actions of agents, performing within the scope of their authority, regulatory agencies and courts aggressively enforce agency laws, standards, and regulations. So what could happen if you breach your duty? Not much. Rescission of listing agreement. That means you lose commission. Right? Not that bad. I mean, there's more, right? Forfeiture of any compensation that may already have been earned. Okay, so I lost $500 as an example, right? Disciplinary action by state laws. This is the problem, these last 2, right? Disciplinary action by state law authorities, including license suspension or revocation, or even suit for damages in court. So if you do something that's against your agency relationship, right? If you're not helping somebody achieve their best interest instead of yours, right? You could lose your license and you could get sued for money. Okay? You guys good? All right, so with that being said, I'm going to play a quick video for you guys. If I can find it right there.
I didn't have to search for it. They made it what?
You guys can hear it?
Easy. Let me tell you the next big mistake most of us make. Raise your hand, and this is what keeps us from ever getting recharged. Ever. Raise your hand if you have a problem in your life right now. Raise your hand. If you don't raise your hand, you lie about other things also. We all do. I call it our monkey. And that monkey sits on your what? Back. And guess what people try to do with their monkey? They give it to us. And guess what we do? We take their monkey. It's not your monkey. Your job when you leave this class is to start practicing monkey maintenance. That's your job. I am a master at it. Because here's what will happen. People ask you this, so tell me. If I buy this short sale, do you think that I'll get at least 20 or 30% equity? That's a great question. Let's do this. Let's ask the appraiser that question, and then they can let you know about the equity and how much equity you have in the property. Everybody raise your right hand. Go like this. Turn to the person next to you and say, it's not my monkey. Let me tell you how serious I am about the monkey. If this is all you get out of this class, it will change your life. Your life. At least 2 or 3 times a day, I'll say to myself, it's not my monkey. That is not my monkey. I taught a class in Alaska. When I checked into the hotel, they gave me a sheet of paper, and they said, Mr. Watson, you need to read this. So I started reading it, and you know what it said? It tells you what to do if you're approached by a charging bear. I looked at it and I said, well, why are you giving me this? They said, well, the way our property's set up is you're going to have to go down a trail to get to your cabin. And on that trail, a couple weeks ago, someone was mauled by a bear. And this tells you what to do if you're approached by a bear. And you know what it said to do? It said if a bear charges you, make yourself look as big, as imposing as possible. To a bear. A bear. And it said if the bear keeps charging, that doesn't work. Cover up all your vital organs is what you should do. Ball up and play dead. That is the best thing to do. And it said in big letters on the paper, if while playing dead, the bear starts to maul you, do not scream. I said, sir, step into my common sense corner here. I'm being mauled by a bear, and you're telling me to not scream? He said, what happens if you scream, now it becomes territorial, and the bear is probably going to have to finish you off. I looked at him, I said, this is not my monkey. This is not my monkey. This is a security issue. You need to have snipers on the trees with rifles, period. That's what needs to happen. I said, and let me tell you what's going to happen. One of your representatives is going to take me to my room. They are going in first. Once I get the all clear, then I am going in. As far as I'm concerned, this mauling is totally avoidable. Totally avoidable.
Anyway, so I've been playing this video for a long time now. Because that's what we said, right? That's what we were going over. Like, you want to avoid liability? Stop giving information. That's what we're talking about here. Information, stuff that you have no experience in. You might know a little bit about it, right? But it still doesn't qualify you as a professional. Like, unless you have a license for that, it doesn't qualify as a professional. So, not your monkey. Give it to somebody else. Bring it. Like, it's a question about mortgage, bring it to the mortgage rep. It's a question about the property condition, bring it to an inspector, and so on. All right? So this will avoid liability. And avoiding liability avoids you losing your license for faulty information. You guys good? All right, great. Guys, we're going to go into a break before I get into forms of real estate agency. And this is where, for Sinead, you were asking before about dual agency, like representing both sides. And also, Jen, if you're still there, if you're watching, after the break, we're going to cover dual agency. All right, guys? And I need your full attention here, obviously, like with everything else. I need your full attention because a lot of people get confused in this one that says no agency. When I get there, you'll see. All right, guys, it's now 11:27. We're going to be back at 11:40. All right, so you got 13 minutes. Enjoy, run, get your coffee. My voice got low? Okay, I guess it's because the mic was here before. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to be back in a little bit. So 11:40, guys. We'll be right back.